This lesson is on the conditions for triangle congruence. You're given two triangles, and the question is, are these two triangles congruent? You have to justify why the two triangles are congruent by using one of the conditions. And there are 4 conditions of congruency. So let's go over them. So the first one is a side, side, side is a condition where it says if all 3 pairs of corresponding sides have equal lengths, then the triangles are congruent. So as you can see, there's a 1 hash mark right here. This line segment is congruent to this line segment right here. The second hash mark line segment right here is congruent to this leg right here. And then we have as a third line right here that is congruent to this line right here. So therefore, it's a side, side, side is the reasoning why the two triangles are congruent to each other. The second condition is a side angle side, where it says if 2 pairs of corresponding sides have equal lengths and the corresponding angles between them, the included angles, have equal measure, then the triangles are congruent. So we start with a side right here, and then we have as an angle, and then we have as a side. It has to flow continuously. So for example, I have this side right here, and then the next thing that they are congruent is an angle, and then from there is a side right here. So this is why it's called a side, angle, side right there. So both of these are sides, are congruent to each other. The angles are congruent to each other, and then also the side is congruent to this side right here. The third condition is an angle side angle, where if 2 pairs of corresponding angles have equal measure and the pair of sides between them have equal measure, then the triangles are congruent. So as you can see, this one starts off with an angle right here, and immediately after it is congruent on the side, and then after that is another angle. So this is a kind of like the opposite of this right here, because we started off with a side angle side on this one, whereas this one we start off with an angle side angle instead. Okay, and then the last condition we have is an angle angle side. Now this one's a little different, where the definition says if 2 pairs of corresponding angles and a pair of corresponding sides that are not between them have equal measure, then the triangles are congruent. The reason why is because on these 2 right here, we had mentioned about immediately they would be something else that's congruent that you can see and identify. Whereas this one right here, I start off with an angle, but I don't have anything that is congruent right here. The next thing that I have congruent is another angle right here. And then after that is a side right here. So this is why it's called an angle, angle, side right here. So when you're going through these conditions, I would go through and ask myself, do I have a side, side, side first? Because that's an easy one to identify. If I don't have a side, 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 the next thing I would ask myself is, do I have a side, angle, side? If you do have a side, angle, side, then you're good, because that will be the condition. But if you don't, the next one you would go through is asking yourself, do I have an angle, side, angle instead? And if not, then the final one should be an angle, angle, side. So we're going to use a flow chart, and the flow chart is to help us put our thoughts together. Eventually we will take away the flow charts and be able to write down the reasoning, but for this lesson we're going to go ahead and use a flow chart. So going back to the question that was asked, are these 2 triangles congruent? We're identifying what is given and then tell us the definition of congruency. So let's look at these 2 triangles. The first thing I would do is make sure I have everything I need in the 2 triangles. So for example, I have a 32 degrees right here. I want to make sure I have a 32 degrees angle on the other triangle, which looks good. I have a 75 degrees angle right here. I want to make sure I also have another 75 degrees. That looks good. And then I have a side right here that is 5.75. And I also have a side right here that's a 5.75. So that looks good. So now from here, I have to go through the 4 conditions. Now, if you just go straight into writing these things, which is fine, but then at the end, you're going to have to go through it and kind of organize it to see which of the 4 that you have. So if you kind of start off in the beginning, identifying which of the 4 conditions that you're going to go with, this is going to help you set up your bubbles for your flow chart. So for example, I would look at this and ask myself, do I have a side, side, side? So I do not have that because I don't have a side, side, side right here. Okay, so then that won't work. Do I have a side, angle, side? So I do have a side right here. I do have an angle right here, but I do not have is another side right there. So that option is out. So the third condition was an angle, side, angle. Do I have an angle, side, angle? And then again, it has to be immediately. So I have an angle right here. I have a side, but I don't have an angle right here. So it can't be that. Or even if I try this one right here, an angle, I would have to have a side right here for another angle right here. So it can't be condition number 3. So condition 4 was an angle, angle, side. So I do have an angle right here. I do have an angle because remember you had to skip, and then I have a side right here. So this is going to be an angle, angle, side. So when I set this up, I'm going to go ahead and use my 75 first right here because that's going to be my first angle. So if I have 75 degrees for angle B, on the other triangle, my 75 degrees is on angle P. So I have then is angle P and angle B are 75 degrees. So from here, these given, I'm going to put it down to this bubble right here, which says then that angle B is congruent to angle P. And remember, congruent just means that they are equal or they're same size. So we're going to go ahead and use that part right there. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. So I have now is this angle right here. So my angle A is 32 degrees. My other 32 degrees will be here. So my angle T is 32 degrees. So together, if I go down on the next flowchart level right here, I have as angle A is congruent to angle T. The last one I have is right here on the side. So AC is equal to 5.75. So then my other 5.75 would be here from TO. And so together, AC is congruent to TO. Now, after you have gone to this second level right here, now you're going to say is the two triangles are congruent to each other. But how do you name the triangles? So as we mentioned on the last lesson, we want to start with our B first right here. Then we want to go to A as next. So we go from B to A. So then we would have to go to C. And then same thing on the second triangle. I start with P first. And then I go to T. So it becomes P, T, and then O right here. So that's what we have right here. Triangle BAC is congruent to triangle PTO. And the condition that we are congruent is because of angle, angle, side. Let's try another one. So again, look at the two triangles, identify all your parts that you need. And so I'm looking at this and I see I have a 56.5. So I have a 56.5 right here. I have a 12 right here. And I also have a 12 right here. I have a 101.2. And I do not have a 101.2 on this side right here. But I do have is a 22.3 on this side right here. So I'm going to go and find the other angle for this part right here. So if I add these two numbers and subtract it from 180, that's going to give me 22.3 on this side right here, which is identical to this part right here. So on this part of the triangle, if I add the 56.5 and 22.3, subtract it from 180, we're going to get 101.2 on this angle right here. Okay, so now from here, let's go through this and identify what are we looking for. So we want to start off with an angle, and I have an angle of C right here, which is 56.5 degrees. So if 56.5 degrees is here, we have to find our other 56.5 degrees, which is angle P right here. So we're going to go ahead and say the angle P is also 56.5. So at this level right here of the flowchart, then we can say that the angle C is congruent to angle P. The next one we have is a side. So we have an angle side, and we probably would go angle is next, right? So we want to go with this side right here, or CA is 12, and the other 12 would be then our PG. So then together, CA is congruent to PG. So now we have as our last angle, so angle A is 101.2, and so the other 101.2 would be here on angle G, and so together, angle A and angle G are congruent to each other. Now I can go ahead and put my triangles together. So again, I start off with my C, and then I went from A, right? C to A right here. So we go C to A to T. And the same thing right here. I started with P, and we're going to go to angle G. So P, G, I would be my triangle right there. And again, the condition that we use for this is because we have an angle, side, angle right here. So angle, side, angle is the condition. So this is the assignment where we're going to use our flow chart to help us which of the 4 conditions we will need to justify that the 2 triangles are congruent to each other.